I'm a board member with the Harold Hunter Foundation. Over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, many people of African descent have essentially been left to die. However, we are incredibly resilient and joyful people committed not only to surviving, but also thriving. So, keeping with the for us, by us ethos in mind, how can people of the African diaspora work together to promote our own health, well-being, and joy through mutual aid, support, and skateboarding in ways that don't necessarily rely on the mainstream or global north governments, institutions, or industries? Now, I'd like our panel to each introduce themselves. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your pronouns, and where you are based, because this thing is really worldwide. So, Kava, would you mind kicking us off, please?
Sure thing, Patrick. Hi, everyone. My name is Kava Garcia-Vasquez, pronoun she, her, and I am one of the two co-founders of Bronx Girl Skate, which is a Bronx-based initiative to celebrate and grow the women's skateboarding scene in the Bronx and beyond. I am also an employee at the Harold Hunter Foundation, and I support our programs director as a project and program manager. So that's all about me. I'm happy to be here, folks.
Very happy to have you. Sandy, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. So my name is Sandy Alibo. I'm the founder of Surf Ghana Collective, which is a collective based in Ghana, and the idea is to empower the youth through skateboarding and surfing activity. I'm also a creative director, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about this topic. It means a lot to me, actually. Thank you.
Okay, and we also have Charl. Please introduce yourself. Oh, you have to go. You're muted.
I just unmute myself. I'm unmuted. Cool. So I'm Mr. Charl Jensel. I'm a program officer at Skateistan, South Africa, based in Cape Town, Western Cape. Yeah, that's me.
Like I said, worldwide. Now, before we begin, we just wanted to let you know that the first Pushing Against Racism Fund, which aims to financially support anti-racist leadership and inclusion within the skateboarding community worldwide, a total of $12,000 US dollars in grants in 2022 will be awarded to nonprofits across 6 continents with input from an expert jury. The Pushing Against Racism Fund is being organized by the Goodpush Alliance and a dozen skateboarding-based organizations around the world, including the Harold Hunter Foundation. The fund has just opened for applications and people can apply until March the 28th on goodpush.org. The decision to create this fund was a follow-up to the commitment to anti-racism in skateboarding that was launched last May and now has more than 840 signatories, including several people in this room, plus 250, actually more than 250 social skateboarding projects, brands, skate shops from over 50 countries. Once again, this thing is worldwide. So let's dive into it. The first question for our panel is, how do we describe health, wellness, and healthcare? Each of you go. Feel free to unmute yourselves because it's a small panel. We don't have to use the raise hand function. So whoever would like to go first and then just pass it over, please kick it off.
Yes, so maybe I'm going to start. So me, I would like to say that Black joy, wellness for me is above all how to celebrate Black people all around the world in skateboarding, how to highlight them, how to make sure that they also inspire other people, you know. And I feel like this is my first, motivation every morning, how to surprise people, how to highlight them, how to help them to uplift them, how to empower them. And I feel like what makes me happy every morning is just to see that my team is growing, I met some of them out of school, unemployed. Now they get self-confidence, they talk to the media, they have their smile on their face, not only because they skate, but also because people give them the chance to be there, to be visible, to exist. And I think as a Black person, it's already a struggle since we're born, you know, like we always have to struggle to be seen, you know. And sometimes I also want to celebrate them, because I don't want to celebrate only me. I don't want people to celebrate me only because I'm doing something, but because I believe that joy is a necessity, is necessary for us to be alive, you know, like to be happy. And I think it's part of us. And I think we should have more initiative we celebrate us. So yeah, that's maybe one of my first answer about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And then the question was about like what is health? Like, how do we define health and joy?
Yes. How do we define health, wellness, healthcare, and joy?
Well, I guess I'll start with joy because Sandy beautifully spoke. I'll start with health because Sandy spoke so well to joy. So it's funny when you look up the word health on Google, that Merriam-Webster dictionary definition just says it's the state of being free from illness or injury. And then you look at WHO and they're like, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So already looking at these two definitions, going from the most basic, you see that it's kind of defined as a freedom from rather than a freedom to, right? It's defined based on what it lacks. And I like the WHO definition because I think it's a step closer to talking about not just the physical health, but you know, the more holistic understanding of how the physical, the mental, the social, the spiritual all work together to constitute one's well-being or one's health. And I guess in the context of Blackness for me, I feel like joy is a huge part of our health, because I feel like health for me is the state of being alive and well. And wellness, there are certain metrics that we can use to gauge health and wellness on a more broad scale. Like, I don't know, like we have things like someone's GDP, all these sorts of sterile things, but it's like, how supported does one feel in the community? How empowered does one feel in their own voice to speak up against injustice or for causes that they believe in? So for me, health is definitely something a lot deeper than the physical. And it's something that people can all, while we have the general definitions, it's something that's so important for individuals to be able to define for themselves what wellness looks like to them.
Cool. So yeah, so my definition of the health and wellness and joy, I think it's just how people, you know, how people go about and feel about themselves on a daily basis. If you take how one take care of it themselves, from cleaning yourself, from your beliefs, your faith, and how content you are within your own body and grounded you feel, and that kind of caters to the joy that you experience, and then overall complete your whole wellness as a person.
That's a really wonderful. Oh, go on, please.
No. I said that's what it means to me. That's my definition.
Those are really wonderful responses from all of you. And so let's kick it into high speed then. Why is it that Black and brown people, in your respective experiences, why is it that we have less and very differential access to healthcare? And I think that's something that's really important to outline for this panel and for everybody in the virtual room, is that you have all of us from different parts of the world with very different backgrounds, and more importantly, backgrounds which are not particularly covered in the American or the European mainstream. So I'd really like to hear what have been your experiences and observations with that difference in healthcare, that difference in access to screenings, that difference in access to a primary care physician, or even being able to get a specialist to understand that that throbbing pain is something way more serious than a tummy ache.
Yeah. Oh, you want to say something? I don't know. Okay. I would like to comment this. I think I have both experience on my side because I was living in France. I'm from Caribbean. I was living in France and now I'm based in Ghana. And I feel like definitely we don't support and give the tools or any help the same way we give help in France to compare to Ghana. So the youth here, when they have a problem, even we don't talk about mental health. It's something coming from Europe, like everybody say that. So they don't have anyone to talk to, like, so it's really difficult. It's not something that people want to, a topic that people want to address. We don't say we are depressed, but unfortunately, when you take the social media, for example, when the youth, they always say to you that they wish they can do this or they can do that, etc. So sometimes they are hopeless. So it's really difficult to understand different point of view, and that's also why I really admire the work that we've done with the funds and and other initiatives everywhere in the world, because we need to address the topic in a different way according to the continent. We don't have the same way to help and support people who have mental health problems, etc. But I feel like it's nice for me to observe it, to also educate other people from other background, other country, to say, hey guys, stop, we're not doing this here. Like, you need to listen to us. You need to take more time to observe and also identify the problem. We are different. We don't skate the same way that in Europe. We don't have the same need about educational program, etc. So I feel like, yeah, it's really huge gap. It's really huge gap. And I'm happy that through skateboarding, sometimes we can give them a second family. This is what I'm working on for the past 5 years, is to make them sure that, okay, beside their families, they can go to the skate parks, they can meet other people, they can support each other. That's why for me, for example, the importance of the collective is really also to show them that even if when they're alone, it's difficult, but when they are together, they can achieve so many great things. And they don't specifically need money, they need also courage, they need to listen to each other, and basically they build up each other. And I'm trying to learn to teach them also that there is so many different ways to scale up, and also to develop youth entrepreneurship, youth leadership, and all these tools really help them to get more self-confidence, courage, and improve naturally their mental health. Yeah.
For me, it's so difficult to have a conversation about why do Black folks worldwide have differential and often less access to healthcare without talking about imperialism. Like, it's just like for generations, and we're not just talking about slavery, we're talking about the continual extraction of resources, the usurpation of resources, primarily from the continent, primarily from what we call the global South. And I'm from the United States, right? I'm born and raised New York native from the Bronx, but my family's from the Dominican Republic. And even just this, it feels like the entire Western part of the world, all Latin America, were like pseudo colonies of the United States because of how the forceful hand with which the US dictates our economies, it dictates our political systems, which in turn trickle down and affect our healthcare. It affects our ability to self-determine, right? And so it's like when we think about all of these different, legacies, not just of the past, but the vestiges of these types of imperialist systems, which are really racist in their root, like you still see, and in the United States, for example, we have the legacy of Jim Crow. Slavery technically still exists because there's a loophole, I want to say, in the 14th Amendment, where slavery is like outlawed except as punishment for a crime. That's like written into the law. Yeah. You know what I'm 13. Saying? And so, pardon? The 15th Amendment. Thank you. 14th or 15th. Somewhere between the 13th and the 15th. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that I think that when we contextualize this conversation in a broader discussion about like the vestiges of imperialism and how that's influenced our ability to self-determine. I think that a lot of that imperial process has also, especially in my experiences as a United States American, there's this culture of individualism, this idea that you pick yourself up by the bootstraps. And so when we translate that sort of philosophy, if you will, to health, the idea that everyone is responsible for their own health, that health is this exclusively individual affair, you know, and people fall through the cracks all the time. And so I love what Sandy was saying about the importance of the collective. I think something that I've noticed across the world, whether in the Caribbean, in Mozambique, in South Africa, in Black spaces around in Europe and in Southeast Asia, I find that presence of the collective as, you know, a part of your health is so much more prevalent. You know, the ability to have community members, you know, people are looking out for each other. Maybe you're part of a church, maybe you're part of a boys and girls club, maybe you're part of a skate crew, and all of these point to the ways that human beings are not meant to thrive. We're not able to thrive in isolation. You know what I mean? And I feel like some of the ways when we talk about reimagining what health can look like for people who come from that sort of legacy of being impacted negatively by imperialism, coming back to the ways in which we practice collective communal care are so crucial. And I think that there's a lot of structure, specifically in my experience in the United States, that intentionally try to sever those bonds in some way, shape, or form, whether with ourselves or with the people around us. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think we have differential access to healthcare by design.
It was really, really awesome, right there, by making that direct link to imperialism, because I think something to hammer home that point, if you look at our panelists and myself, you've got a picture of the children of imperialism and colonialism. Charl, who was based in South Africa. South Africa was a British colony, then Dominion, and then an apartheid state till 1994. Sandy's really from the French Caribbean, which is a département outre-mer, territoire outre-mer, which is French overseas territory, still ruled by the colonial metropole. And with Kava being from DR, you know, DR was subject to many interventions by the United States during the 20th century. So this is not way back in the past, somewhere deep in your high school history book. This is within all of our parents' and grandparents' living memory. And with that, Charl, please, your thoughts on why Black and Brown people have less and differential access to healthcare.
Cool. So thank you for that. So if we look at South Africa and Cape Town, especially Cape Town, and the colonial influences it had in building our cities and our infrastructures, you will land in our city. You will get off the airplane and you will hit the freeway where you can literally see the gap and the difference between low, middle, and high class. If you hit the freeway, you see under source communities, and then you will go past and on your way to the top where you get to, you know, your CBD and your city where all your high class areas where all the wealthy people lives. If I need to take it back to our history, you know, when our city was colonized, most of our people were removed from their heritage, where their forefathers used to live. If I take like communities like the Buka, District 6, you know, people were removed due to gentrification. They were removed from their homes and placed in isolated areas were in underserved environments, and those were the type of environments that lacked access to proper healthcare, educational services, which left a lot of our people hopeless. And our people started comparing, why are we underserved? Why don't we have what they have? And then our people will go and maybe want to steal because they don't have, or they will go and vandalize. And that's just how the decay started, and that's the norm that most of our people started to adapt to, and just not having the access to and the type of equality to infrastructure, resources, and to sport facilities, healthcare, and etc. And South Africa is one of Cape Town is a perfect example of that.
Thank you for providing such vivid imagery. And it's not just in cities like Cape Town where you can see that difference, that class divide in a really explicit fashion. I see a hand raise. What I'm going to do is if you want to drop your question into the chat, we'll keep the questions for the end so that we don't break up the flow of the conversation. So the next question is, before we pivot fully into skateboard mode, is how do we make health and wellness more than a hashtag, particularly here in the United States? I'm in Los Angeles, California, the capital of beauty and wellness and dieting and things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of the conversation around mental health, physical health is being gentrified. That is, it's being seen as a lifestyle accessory for the middle class, for the upper middle class, and the wealthy, as opposed to a universal right that should be guaranteed. So how do we struggle against that? And I say it specifically because there's a huge presence of health and wellness gentrification on the internet, more specifically on social media platforms such as Instagram. It's something that's remote, it's distant, it's something that costs a lot of money and you have to look good doing it. So for the three of you, how do we struggle against that? Because that is something that is standing in the way of universal access to healthcare, to mental health. It's being presented as something only for the bourgeois.
I will comment by just saying that, of course, our experience in skateboarding in Africa, it's really new to compare to US. So I will just comment about my experience in Africa. And I will say that first, when we imagine to build a skate park, we imagine a project in the center of Accra that everybody has access to. That's really important. That means in Europe or US, maybe the skate park are free, it's normal. But in Africa, everything that you do, basically you have to pay. You want to go to the swimming pool, you have to pay. We talk about the time about mental health and wellness, etc. for everybody, but it's not true. Here, everything has a price, so it costs a lot of money and it's considered as a leisure time. Skateboarding is leisure time. Even the elders, they still don't get it, So to give an easy access and to improve wellness and mental health, the basic things is to get free access to something. So for example, at the skate park, we create the park, but we also give access to sneakers, skateboards, and protective gears. That's really important because here, people can come basically without any money and they can skate. And it's not like, okay, we have the skate park, but you still need to get access to a skateboard, etc. So, for me, it's the difference because so far we launched the park like 3 months ago, and we have already more than 300 or 400 people registered to skate, which is really crazy when before the skate park, we have less than 80% skating. So I'm pretty sure that already give an easy access, a free access to a sport or just a sport infrastructure, etc., help definitely to, contribute also to develop wellness, but also black joy and improve the mental health naturally, because the youth, they are coming freely to the park without any stress of people asking them their idea, their money, why they are here, etc. So that's the kind of recreational center that don't even exist in Africa. So for us, it was really the basic things. Then we also choose the location. For example, a lot of people were saying, yeah, you should maybe build a park in this particular zone, etc. And now I was like, no, I really want to create a space where I encourage social mixing. I really, really insist on that. And a lot of people didn't believe me at the beginning. They were like, yeah, maybe that place is not, it's central, but everybody's coming at the skate park. And I'm really, really happy and proud to say that if you're coming on Saturday, you will have the diaspora, the travelers, the native, the creative, the kids from the street, they are coming because they have access. I make sure that they have also access to the park. We have different background, people coming to from the university, student, non-student, unemployed, employed. It's just like, it's an amazing conversation that we just started. And I really believe that, I'm not saying that I have the key, but I observed everything happening in the world, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. So here in Ghana, I'm trying to pick everything good that I observe everywhere. And I have so many amazing conversations with skateboarders from Europe, from US, who tell me, okay, we do that here and it works. So I think is first to improve mental health and develop Black joy, you need also to talk to other community everywhere in the world. You know, you need to observe and you need to listen with humility and work with humility and understand that we need to test and learn. I don't have the best recipe, and people maybe from US they don't have. But the fact that we can take like 2 years, 3 years to talk to each other, have Zoom call, conversation, etc., make us take the right decision. And yeah, I'm really happy that today we really encourage social mixing. And I think it's the key to develop and I mean to empower the youth in general, because they face other profile every day. They can launch conversation and they can get inspiration from everybody. And I think it's just already evolving with respect, you know, like the respect that Black people we deserve for so many years. Just the fact that we can have a space where we can feel like as a skateboarder, not just as a Black person, just as a, you know, just I'm just a skateboarder. And I feel like just the respect that they have right now with this skate park is just beautiful. So yeah, I really encourage people to give free access and develop social mixing to make sure that this is not a skate park just for the poor or for the Black. It's a skate park for everybody. But we make sure that we talk to each other to make to build something that fits in the country and the neighborhood, etc.
Yeah, I would like to agree with Sandy around the accessibility and especially the free access to resources. If I compare a skate park that charge a fee to skate versus a open public skate park, which one is more buzzing? It's obviously the one that's free, you know, that has free access. Yeah, and that's why I feel it's important for us to have these interventions. And if I look at social skate sports development programs or organizations, I praise them because, you know, I've been involved in the sector for 10 years and working in all sorts of different communities and seeing how these programs have really become, you know, a crutch for the communities, for the kids that's part of the program, and making them aware, you know. And so it's all about spreading the awareness and being advocates of wellness. So also by being the voice, you know, and yeah, organizing interventions, making it normalizing wellness so that people don't feel ashamed or you know, to talk about it, but can actually engage, you know, confident and freely into such type topics.
That's awesome. I love that all of us do work that we're physically out there trying to create in-person spaces. But I want to speak a little bit more to like the sort of like institutional and interpersonal aspects, because I feel really moved by how Patrick phrased the sort of gentrification or like commodification of like modern health and wellness movements. I wanted something about that though. And it's ironic because earlier I was like, admonish the individual cult of individualism in the United States. But there's a part of me that maybe this is a cultural thing as an American. There's also a part of me that feels like what the social media stuff can be helpful with is helping individuals realize the power that their mind and thoughts have to shape their lived reality. And that's not to say that it's all on the people who have been experienced marginality and oppression to lift themselves up, right? It's more on like balancing the like some of the stuff, some of what Sandy and Charl spoke to around creating these spaces, offering these free resources, and really showing people that this is possible, you know, and breaking down those barriers that make people feel afraid to acknowledge when they feel pain or when they feel joy. And for me, I'm thinking like this whole multi-pronged approach, like there's the institutional stuff, which we've spoken to, you know, people, it makes sense why Black and brown folks don't trust the medical industrial complex. They've experimented on us. They tell us that we're not full people. They've told us that we don't feel pain the same way that white folks do. Like there's reasons why people may not trust the industrial complex. And there's, you know, we can use sports, nonprofits, activism to get to people in the streets. And I also feel like there has to be a sort of way that people who work in these institutions, doctors, healthcare personnel, educators, can go about trying to learn about the history so as to go about their present actions in a way that helps to build trust. You know, not necessarily between the institution and the population, but between the people that occupy both of these spaces. Because at some point or other, even healthcare professionals need, even the therapist needs a therapy session. You know what I'm saying? And I think that with like when we're meeting people where they're at, that can look like, you know, healthcare personnel understand that these folks live in a rural area. Okay, like how can we find ways to have telemedicine, expand telemedicine? How can we make sure that we're addressing social determinants of health? You know, talking about food insecurity, like maybe we're talking about healthcare, maybe looks like developing a community shared agriculture program that accepts EBT, like that's a type of food stamp public assistance program in New York City and in the United States. So it's like, as we talk about, you know, making health and wellness more than just a hashtag, I think it's so important to think about the different, like, if we're all threads in the social fabric, the work that each of us are doing is pulling apart at the seams of like the old world order that is just terrible for all people and especially for Black and brown folks. And when we learn that past and we think about ways that we can train the workforce, think ways that we can creatively tackle some of the more socioeconomic barriers to health as well, I think that that can also strengthen the work that we do when we're trying to get folks to come out to a skate park or take up space in public, because they're bringing all of that energy, all of those challenges into the skate park. And they're going to go back to it when they leave. And having something like approaches, like each of us are going to tackle a different aspect of the problem. We may not be able to solve everything for everyone at once. But I'm excited about the work that we're doing. And I'm also excited about the developments, even in academia, like folks like Naftali, he may not be here right now, but he's fighting a version of the fight, you know? Like we have folks who are like, I remember reading this book. There's two texts that are coming to mind specifically. One, there's this dermatologist from the UK who wrote, I forget his name, but he wrote the first book on dermatology so that we can teach medical students how to recognize issues on the skin on melanated people. You know what I'm saying? And that's but one of a myriad of ways that we can tackle some of these disparities, you know, education, bringing people together, and also educating ourselves. Like I know personally with my family members, Dominicans, we love chicharrón de pollo, being like deep fried food. And so sometimes healthcare and collective health looks like, hey mom, I know you're not the biggest fan of salad, but maybe why don't we try using this type of rice instead of the rice we always use, or prepare this meal in a different way. And in that regard, there's also that interpersonal aspect where I'm trying to take care of you and myself. And like, there's just so many levels to this. So I hope that was somewhat coherent, but too
Absolutely.
Long, there's levels to this.
We could probably have just a dedicated conversation about access to food security, you know, and access to healthy and nutritional produce. That could be a 2-hour talk in itself. Moving more into skateboarding, more specifically the skateboarding industry. So we've talked about individual approaches to health, wellness, and Black joy. We've talked about some of the institutional challenges that we've faced. So within skateboarding, and we'll extend it to say surfing as well, because the industries do have a lot of similarities in that skaters tend to be independent contractors rather than employees, at least here within the United States. And there have notably been a lot of challenges with mental health episodes for skaters who are on tour. They're out in another country. They're somewhere in a van. Something happens. There's some sort of episode. Uh, it could be an anxiety attack. It could be a full-on psychotic break. It could be an overdose. It could be all kinds of challenges. So a question I have for you all is, we know what challenges and what steps we can take as individuals, but what steps could skateboard companies, surf companies, what can they do for their riders, even though they have a relatively distant relationship? Riding for a skateboard company is not the same as, say, working an office job where they have healthcare benefits and transit benefits and things like that. In skateboarding, it's pretty much very much DIY. But what can skateboard companies that are sending folks out on the road, who are basically quasi guardians of skateboarders, what can they do to help support mental and physical health?
Yeah, so for example, on my side, I work in different sport industry, skiing, snowboarding, BMX. And also I noticed that in different other sports, they're really well organized because it's official sport, like mainstream sports. Sorry, they have really a group of people like who really support the team. So, for example, you have someone gonna do a coach for food. We're gonna have someone who's gonna do the massage for them. You're gonna have, everybody's taking care of the team because it's like competition. They want to win, etc. But in skateboarding, of course, is a little bit different because first of all, we don't specifically want to compete everywhere. Like we just want to skate and that's it. So I feel like a lot of companies didn't really understand that they need to take care of the team. They need to take care of them. So I usually see that kind of profile, and also team members. Like, for example, in football, you see all the time that they have, the entire team who's taking care of them. But in skateboarding, let's say that maybe they're gonna say that it's about the money, the budget, etc. But I believe there is a lot of solution who are really affordable. So I'm gonna give you two. So first, for example, I don't represent a brand like Vans, etc. But let's say that on my perspective as an NGO, what did I do so far with not a lot of budget? So I founded like 2 years ago the Skate Girl Club, and the idea was not actually to teach people only how to skate, but it was also more to connect other young entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, and just talk to them, and they feel free to, and not so many intimidated also by men. So they're like, for one day per week, we privatize the skate park, and the skate park is managed by women. So they get a lot of self-confidence because they are managing the place. They're selling the drinks, they teach people how to skate, they learn hospitality, etc. So first, you basically you give them the park and they manage it. So you give them self-confidence and you encourage them to develop their skills. So that's the first step. The second step was also to launch what I call skate therapy. It's a program that involves skateboarding, but one time per week we do meditation. We do meditation because this is something even for me is new. I never did that, but it's amazing. And I'm not saying that this is the only way, but just have a reflection on ourselves, talk to ourselves for 4 minutes, etc., 10 minutes. The skateboarders, they reveal so many things about them, how they feel. And I think by creating this, I was really able to create a safe space. And again, this is not my idea. I also have a conversation about a lot of people in US telling me how it was really important to encourage therapy in skateboarding or in sport or even with the youth. So I developed this. So it's just like 30 minutes after a session, and it works pretty well. And I think the girls now, for example, they can't wait to have their session on Thursday because they know that this is the moment that they can talk about themselves and people can listen. So that's the second point that I developed. And I think we just launch the project. So I don't know, maybe in a few months I'm going to tell you maybe there is another way. But I think already doing this really help them to get the confidence that they need to also grow. Yeah.
So thank you for that, Sandy. From my point, I think yeah, skate companies could really incentivize their riders, by like maybe partnering up with our care service, maybe that loves to volunteer or they need to get to college and they need to do a internship. And that's where I think skate companies could partner with individuals or private institutes to take care of their riders, because a rider is an employee of just as the marketing person. The rider is the guy putting their brand on the map, and it's an important employee that should be taken care of. I know like big brands, like I think Red Bull or those type of elite big brands take care of their riders in such a way. But yeah, I really think there should be more ways to explore partnering or getting like yeah, medical aid for riders, especially like these huge companies. Um, that's what I think.
Yeah, no, similar to Charl, I feel like it would be really dope to see like especially the larger companies actively offer some sort of health coverage or some sort of like, even like when I started at Harold Hunter Foundation, I started the position technically through this program called AmeriCorps, which is like a year of service, and it's got a lot of, there's a lot to unpack there. But, one of the challenges I had was transitioning from a corporate job that had nothing to do with skateboarding and then transitioning into a nonprofit, and all of a sudden not having corporate health insurance and having to navigate the public system. And I definitely would not have been able to do it without the assistance of our executive director, Jessica, because I knew nothing about it. I really just had no idea what I was doing. And it took a while for me to figure it out. And I'm so grateful to have health insurance now. But I can imagine if I were a pro skater, not going to happen, but we could all dream. I think what could be really cool is what if skate companies, when they, what if they, like, whenever they went on tour with a specific group, they could also like purchase like temporary health insurance, kind of like travel health insurance when you go on a trip that covers skateboarding. It's challenging because a lot of healthcare companies, at least in the US, don't always cover skateboarding because it's considered an extreme sport. Some places it's a leisure activity. What are you going to do? But that would probably be the biggest help. And as well as like having direct access, like connections to substance abuse counseling or centers that we could refer folks to. Yeah, those two primary things. Yeah.
Those are really brilliant responses. I think we got some industry heavy hitters in here. These are some high-level recommendations from a serious panel of experts, which then leads me to another question. I think this will be my second to last question before we open it up to the floor. We've got about 15 minutes left. So how do we address skaters leaning on skateboarding, the activity of skateboarding, as a mental health crutch? Skateboarding is amazing. It can give you a sense of accomplishment and incredible joy, even just hanging out with your buddies, skating a curb, right? I've met people from all over the world by skateboarding. Even in instances where there's a language barrier, you can still chat with each other because a lot of the words are the same no matter which language you use them in. On the flip side, however, skateboarding is no substitute for access to mental health and mental health best practices. So in that aspect, we have a long way to go. On one hand, you have a much more open dialogue in skateboarding, both at the rank and file level, us regular skateboarders, at the industry level, and at the sponsored amateur professional level. People are talking about substance abuse, they're talking about mental health. But how do we make sure that people don't tie all of those aspects of mental health and self-care into skateboarding? Like, how do we make sure that skateboarding isn't like the sole provider of an individual's mental health?
I love your question. I will say that, yeah, it's not the responsibility of skateboarding, of course, but let's say that a lot of other sports at the moment, by creating federation, working with institutions, they've been able to develop like educational program who actually do the job, with the sport included. So I feel like in skateboarding, if we apply the same recipe, at least like work with institution and create that educational program besides skateboarding, it could definitely work. So I think this is one of the first easy answer to give to that challenge actually that we all faces. But again, I think skateboarding has a power that other sports don't have, like the freedom that we give just by this sport that we even consider as an art now, give more confidence and courage that other sport, and the fact that they can practice freely, we don't see the same way than other sports. So I feel like the way we don't specifically need to frame that mental health solution in skateboarding. I think every country, every team has his own way to proceed. And again, what I share with you is my vision in Ghana, in Africa. But again, in Uganda, maybe the people is not going to respond the same way. But I can just say that an educational program is maybe mandatory at the moment to make sure that we don't put everything on skateboarding. We have to work on something else besides skateboarding.
I definitely agree. I also think that it's all to do with, the awareness. So often people get into skateboarding because they feel like, this is where I can just release some stress. This is my escape from my problems, but not knowing that it's just, it's a temporary escape from problems. You're done with your session, you go home, you faced with whatever was bugging you. So I think it's just, educating skaters that skateboarding is not, the crutch. It's something that can put you in a crutch or on crutches, but it's not something that you can lean on as a tool to just get rid of trauma. I think it's just about setting awareness and creating those, again, creating the safe spaces for skateboarders so that they can practice or voice or share and also feel supported and be equipped to find better ways to deal with the trauma. Again, I think it's all about just normalizing this whole thing of mental health.
Yeah, no, to build off of what Sandy and Charl are saying, like skateboarding is not in and of itself the answer, but for a lot of people, especially when I've noticed this a lot with young men in our programs at Harold Hunter Foundation, that a lot of folks, like, they say, oh, I skated today, like that's all I have to do. There's this really cool book called The Body Keeps the Score. I think it's called Besson, like Vander Kolk, something like Vander some. I need to write all this stuff down and share with you guys after with the program, with the participants of this chat. But that book, I remember reading, I'm thinking about it now because a lot of skateboarders, myself included, I love the feeling of catharsis, but there are moments where I get really frustrated with my skateboarding, especially like if I'm not able, like if I go to skate because I need to clear my mind and then I don't stretch, I don't breathe, I just get right into it. And there's just like this almost like frenetic energy to it, which sometimes can feel really good, right? But sometimes I end up hurting myself, or I fall, or I just feel like I don't get anywhere. And those moments are really difficult to get through. And I think that also provides a great opportunity for, especially for those of us who do more structured programming around skateboarding, to like empower the youth we work with specific tools. Like even if it's like count to 10, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And during these specific moments, and you're not going to be perfect, but during these specific moments, try to come back to your breath and like reset your breath, right? And so trying to find ways that organizations and us as like sort of like institutions can help individuals self-regulate and like empower them with that skill set, I think is super duper important, especially for like the long-term health of the folks that we're working with. I think another thing I've seen a lot, I have a friend here who does yoga and meditation. I love, Sandy, what you were saying about meditation and sort of creating that space where the girls can just talk about their lives and themselves and build community that way. I think that's so important as well, because again, skateboarding is this really physical activity. It can be very meditative, but it can also be very triggering and surface a lot of trauma or feelings that our bodies keep locked in. We clench our jaw, we tighten our shoulders, you know? And so having other tools, like maybe, for example, like skate session, it could be like, oh, when you're working with young kids, like maybe you start off the session to try to ground them so that anything that they're coming with at home or at school, they come there and there's a few minutes where we all breathe together. We all do some light stretches to prepare our body. You know, I don't know about doing it at the end because people get really hyped, but at least starting out with that way, right? That could be a really dope tool. There's a lot of ways that we can draw from other mindfulness practices and yoga-esque physical practices that I think could really help strengthen skateboarders and athletes in general, both physically and spiritually. Yeah.
All of those are wonderful responses. We've got about 6 minutes left, so I want to open it up to questions, but this is a quick one, and you have to answer quickly because we want to make time for the folks out there. What is one thing that has brought you joy this Black History Month?
I'll start off. Well, for me, it's probably my work. It's seeing the communities that I work in and seeing the little hope, the little hope that we give to these young people, that comes from broken families and homes, and just knowing that we can still be there as support and still installing hope in our people. That keeps me going, man.
On my side, I would just say the fund. For me, achieve this. It's amazing. Again, it's history. For us, we did it. So maybe for people who they don't understand, but in the skateboarding industry, being able to highlight other talent that just like skateboarders, like filmmaker, photographer, like people in the skate industry for years who do cool stuff and they don't get access to any funds. For me, that's really a brilliant project. And again, I will make sure that everybody know about it. That's not the only solution, but I really insist on positivism all the time. Let's find solution. Let's talk, but let's find solution. And I think it's already a good one. So we need to celebrate that this month.
I feel like a lot of things brought me joy this month. It's like kind of hard to pick one, but to this month, I've been really leaning into strength. Like I had caught COVID a couple of times. We didn't really, I see a question there about COVID, so I'm hoping this is a good little segue. But I had dealt with some autoimmune issues and just like really had felt very weak for the better part of the past 2 years. And this month, like I've been practicing more aerial art, which is very different from skateboarding, but it's been somehow really strengthening my skateboarding, and my pop is getting so much better because it's like I feel so strong in my body because I'm challenging it to do things that are out of my comfort zone. And it feels, I don't know, the feeling of growth and like that feeling when like you're confident in your path, even when you don't see it laid out in front of you. I just think that's such a beautiful, blessed feeling. And I've been like really soaking that in lately. And yeah. And then this panel. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think for me specifically, it has been seeing the conversation in skateboarding operating at a really, really high level in a way that you have skateboarders who are talking about not only geopolitical issues, but also talking about skateboarding in the city, the fact that there are skateboarders who are training as urban planners, who are going into running for office, who are embedding themselves in institutional spaces and are learning how to translate between how skaters think and look at the world and how regular people, especially people who work in government spaces, who work in the private sector, it's really, really cool to see skateboarders being in these previously very rigid spaces, but now that they have a real interest in what's happening in skating, that they have actual skateboarders to lean upon as subject matter experts. I know we got 2 minutes left, but I think we got enough time for one question. Does anyone want to pop up? Anyone in the crowd want to just jump in with a question for our panel? And that'll be the end of it for today.
I got one.
Please go ahead.
Going back to like healthcare and the idea of like who can pay for the insurance, what about the idea of a union for skaters? Would that be productive or not productive for people who are employed as skateboarders?
Panel, do your thing.
That's a fire idea. Like, would it function like as a union? Like, would it be like US based? Would it be like an international union? Like, oh, I want to flesh that out a little bit.
I think that would be grounds for a whole other conversation. I'll dive in and say probably something along the lines of like the International Tennis Federation. Everybody pays dues into it, and you have some sort of support. I mean, I think that's also how they do the ranking as well, because they have all of that information. Anyway, back to the panel. Skateboarders, do we need a union, players association? How do we do it?
Well, I definitely think we need a union. Coming from a skate industry that doesn't even have a skate federation, which is really blocking, our industry to reach its full potential, to create the support, to build the skate parks and stuff. I think it was sometime along last year, I was talking to the guys from Barcelona, Skate Agora, and those homies actually started a union or a committee kind of thing, because they also never had a skate federation, and they had to also, like us, join the roller federation in terms to get things going for them as skateboarders in the country. And they as a group went and started this committee, which they formed the skate union within the roller federation, and that helped them to get a lot of stuff done for their skate community and the industry in Barcelona. And I think we still don't have a federation even in South Africa, and that really limits our industry to thrive and reach the potential, man. So about the skaters, the ones that and once you have it, so once you have that voice that can stop you, I guess.
On my side, I will just comment by saying that I think it's really a brilliant idea. I don't know how to proceed from different continents, but let's say that from my experience as the founder of a collective, I can confirm that working together on something can definitely help. For example, with the collective, I save money every month, and we can also highlight some skateboarders project, etc. Pay the hospital for someone. So we already proceed like this. So of course it's organic, it's not like a structure as a like foundation or institution, etc. But it works already, and I believe that working on a union could be really, really nice. So let's start the conversation.
And that is the key to moving forward, starting that conversation and following through. Folks, we're just a couple of minutes over. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us across time zones. I'd like to thank the Harold Hunter Foundation and the Goodpush Alliance for putting this together. I would like to thank all of you for attending on this Monday morning or Monday evening or afternoon. And let it be known, this is going to be the first in a series. We're going to continue having conversations like this. It's been a real pleasure moderating this conversation and having such a wide range of expertise from a for real, diverse panel. Thank you again, everybody.